Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Looks Like We Made It. I'm Issy Howell and I'm joined by Managing Director and Creative Industry Expert Chris to talk all things video marketing. We are the father and daughter who run the video production company Howell Film, and each week we will be discussing all sorts like what happens behind the scenes on our projects, getting results from your video content, how to start using video in your business, and plenty more to come. We're always up for candidly conversing about creativity. On this episode, we are answering the question, does your video need dusting down for 2022? So without further ado, let's get started, and of course never miss an episode every Tuesday by giving us a follow or subscribe, as well as finding Howell Film on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn. Let's go. Oh my god, that's always a mouthful.
I was going to say, take a breath. Okay, does your video need dusting down in 2022?
Yeah, and
by dusting down, do you mean just like go looking at your corporate film and seeing if you need it sort of a bit of a kind of a polish, spit and polish,
refresh, I suppose. I think that's the thing. It's like, say you get a video made in 2017, which seems like it was just last year. In fact, it was 5 years ago now. Yeah. And imagine, there are whole people starting school that didn't exist when you were making that film. It's that thing of at what point do you need to look at your video content and go, right, we need to change that?
Is it relevant?
Yes. What?
No, that's the question.
Oh, right.
So basically,
I thought you were asking me that.
No, the simple answer, in my opinion, is if you look at your video output,
yeah,
is it relevant? Is your film relevant to your business now? Because in reality, anything prior to March 2020 most likely is going to be different to everything right now, unfortunately. Is it relevant would be my first question. Second question would be around, the stuff can get dated quite quickly. Stuff can look a bit out of date and a bit old-fashioned. And we're not quite at retro yet. There's that grey area. We like it because obviously people come back to us to have more films made. There's a grey area where it's not quite retro yet and it's not quite cutting edge. It's somewhere in the middle, which looks a bit old-fashioned. However,
yes.
Again, just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should. Because if your video is about, I don't know, say a case study or kind of the core values of the organisation, if they remain the same and that's still a positive thing to talk about and there's some real positivity around it, then yeah, great, knock yourself out. You just perhaps have a refresh about your call to action or some core messages in there, but the actual key video might, the nuts and bolts of it might still be perfectly workable.
Well, I think that's the thing. I find it that from a perspective of, social media content, video marketing and that approach, is that when you think about the time between, 2005 and 2009, in terms of the way, how fast the world moved and how content was consumed, something that was shot 4 years before might not look that different. But now in the past 10 years, I feel like because the way people consume content is so much faster and the way we absorb different kind of video content has transformed, that it feels like there's been millions more pieces of content to look at. The sheer amount of stuff we look at on social media, on websites, the way we even look at information now has improved and changed in so many different ways. And I think that's the thing with it's pace. It's completely changed. Even, Instagram Reels at the start of the pandemic wasn't around, but now it is, and it's an essential part to every business.
It's interesting you chose 2005 to 2009 because, of course, stuck squarely in the middle in there in 2007 was when the iPhone was launched.
Yeah, good point.
So in that, I think that was a bit of a game changer on so many levels, but particularly is a really good camera on here. You can take video, and once you hook that into a faster network, faster mobile network, then tie that into social media as well. And then what was not commonplace, like I can remember when you'd have some words and the occasional picture, and video was actually quite rare. To have on your website or to have on your
well, it was reserved for TV advertising and higher kind of like big companies would have a corporate film and stuff like that. But it's now open to everyone. Everyone could be making video or using video in some way, and I think that's where the landscape has completely changed. So now I feel like, particularly, we're not going to bring up the pandemic word, but
the P word. No, we're not mentioning the P word.
But particularly in the past couple of years, the way we, consume content has completely changed. The whole concept of filming something in your own house, while it could have been unheard of before the pandemic, is now something that we do quite regularly.
I think there's definitely a video honesty now. I think it's quite interesting that we're often in Teams meetings or Zoom or whatever it is, and you can see people in their houses, and essentially it doesn't really matter.
No one sticks a background on anymore, do they?
At the end of the day, everyone's house kind of looks the same anyway. And I mean, unless there's someone who's dead posh, but they wouldn't talk to us anyway. So in reality, everyone we talk to,
that's not to the detriment of anyone that we talk to. Don't take that the wrong way.
Like at the end of the day, it's a weird thing that ultimately, like I say, it all looks the same, and everyone's just what I want to know. I'm going off message now slightly. I want to know. Say when we go back to lots and lots of face-to-face meetings, okay. Are you going to wave when you walk in the room? Because there's a weird thing. So when you're on Zoom, you do a little wave, hello.
It's a little Queen's wave, isn't it?
And also when you walk into a room, you can do a little wave, and your mouth will open and close, and nothing will come out because you realise you're muted.
I never even thought of the little wave, or the thing that really breaks me is when the meeting ends and everyone does that. When newsreaders do that kind of stilted pause while they wait for them to cut the cameras. Yeah, and you sort of do that awkward smile that never ends until the call ends. Like, that's the thing. We all just going to sit and smile quietly until someone leaves.
Maybe we should introduce the "and finally" at the end of every Zoom meeting or Teams meeting or whatever.
We should all walk out.
You should do a "and finally," and then do a really funny, just a quick story about a kitten or something. Like at the end of
an uplifting news story.
So you've done your meeting, and you've gone through all your budget requirements and your figures and stuff, and you've gone through your proposal, and then you go "and finally," and then you tell a story about some puppies.
I think we should do that on this podcast. Some good news to end the day.
Yeah.
But
getting back to the question.
Yes, absolutely. Well, dusting down your podcast, dusting down your video for 2022 is the fact that you want to keep everything fresh in terms of what it is your business is doing. Businesses are constantly fluid. They don't stick to the same structure. They don't stick to the same people. They don't stick to the same colours, the same style for hundreds of years. They keep changing it. Lots and lots of changes happen, and you want to make sure your customers are absorbing your content and learning who you are in your most current form.
And also it's got to be something new to say. So I'm going to contradict myself completely here. That if you've shared video with them over the last 2 or 3 years and they've seen it, your customers, then they're going to go, well, they're just posting the same thing again. I've seen that before. So at the very least, I think you probably should be looking at a refresh. Also, I think that the landscape is different now. That people are often surprised when we say, "Hey," when they say, "Oh, I can make my own film on my iPhone," and we say, "Yeah, great, knock yourself out. You should do loads of content," because that kind of throwaway content, that kind of like instantaneous content, provided it's not downright daft and provided it does a job. Great.
Yeah, we do it.
Great. Do it. Knock yourself out. Really, really sort of push that content out there. Keep your audience engaged. However, if it's something that is high order, something that really needs a professional to deliver a message and deliver sort of core values of the organization, then that's where they should be looking at a professional video marketing company to deliver that.
No, I 100% agree. And I think that's the thing we always say that, and that's why things like Instagram Reels are really essential, is that it gives people the chance to be creative and to push themselves a little bit more and make more moving content that does rack up the views. And it gives you that confidence boost to go, actually, video really does work. Yeah. And that was so if, say, for example, you're a company who's had a video production company make them content maybe 4 or 5 years ago, because I use that kind of point because it's pre-P word and everything like that. What's your opinion on them then reapproaching that video production company saying, can you rework this video to make it look new? What's your opinion on that?
I think I can only go by our video production company that we own and run. They've probably moved on quite a long way. If I think about even just the cameras we're using, I think about the lenses we're using, think about the kind of the work that we've done in the 4 years between doing a job back then and a job now, We've learnt a lot. There are loads of new techniques, loads of new cutting edge things. I would probably say to them, if it's a budget, I can't say.
If it's a budgie.
If it's a budget, right. If it's a money thing, then not a budget thing. Basically what I'm saying is, if they come and say, we've got no money, can we refresh this video? I would say, what can we do to give you more? What needs to happen that we can actually film some new stuff, perhaps introduce some different techniques into this? But ultimately, if like I said early on, if the content's there and it's really nice and it does a job, then yeah, you can top and tail it. You can do some graphical stuff. Even something like changing a voiceover. Provided the original material's right. What would be weird is stuff that's shot, in 720p, on some handy cam, is very different to us shooting in 6K, 8K, 12K, all the fancy stuff we can do now.
Yeah.
It's always going to be a compromise. So, I don't know. But it all boils down to
you never create the same thing. I think that's video marketing should be considered in the same way that any kind of marketing is, any kind of website, branding, any kind of content strategy that you have. You wouldn't, the way that you would conduct yourself and the things you would present in meetings 10 years ago was totally different to how you do it now. The way you do things in business changes. It's constantly fluid. It's constantly changing and evolving and updating. And that can be said the exact same thing for video content and for video production companies. We are always trying to evolve and develop and invest in things that make our content better, and it's worth taking advantage of that.
Definitely.
Using the same stuff, it can just look a bit out of date, and your customers, they will, if they've seen that first video and they've seen that's what you've done, they'll know that's recycled.
And we're not going to obviously mention the P word, but it's interesting. I was watching, because we are one of the few types of people that we actually actively seek adverts to watch on TV as opposed to fast forwarding them. But I saw an advert last night, and it was full of people meeting and greeting, shaking hands, and it was very tactile. It was very full on, close, sort of handshakey type, and it just felt really, really outdated because people don't really shake hands right now. And even, whatever, and I can't see, it's become now the business cultural norm to kind of not shake hands. Yeah. And when someone thrusts a hand at you, you're in that kind of like, oh, do I, don't I?
I've got my elbow in the way.
My elbow in the way or whatever. And I'd love to think in the future that we're back to handshakes, but maybe not. Maybe it'll never happen. But what I mean is, so that video clearly was conceived, made, and produced prior to handshaking being not the done thing anymore. So therefore, looks slightly at odds with where we are right now.
And that's the thing. I agree. And I think that when you are a customer and you're watching a video made by a website made by a company, and you're on their website and you're on their social media and you see that video and you go, oh, great. Okay. I know who they are. The concept of video marketing and video on your website or wherever is to give people that, it's to create a warm bridge between a potential customer and a potential business to get to know each other and meet them and understand what their business is about before they've even picked up the phone or sent an email. And I think that when that process happens, the customer is wanting to see the people in the video. They're wanting to see what they've seen on that video. And if that's not represented in real life, that can be quite jarring. Say, for example, half the people in the video have left since, or have all got different haircuts, and their office has completely changed and their colours have all changed and everything like that. Yeah, you might think, well, that's not represented. That's very, very, well, yeah, it's jarring, really.
Then that relevance that's gone. And I think the other thing as well is here that any video production company worth their salt will actually say to the client, you know what, we could do that. However, maybe you should think about doing this. Yeah. Instead of because the video, if they go back to the original video production company, which they should, because that's what we build our business around, long-term relationships. But in reality, that video production company like I say, they should say, hey, we've moved on as well. We've got this
Yeah.
technique. We've got these tools at our disposal. You know, we could do that for you, but what for you know, perhaps a different amount of money or not a lot of money or maybe the same money. Hey, we can do this. So I think you'd show a lack of creativity if you just blindly said,
that's the thing.
We'll do whatever you ask.
Businesses, I mean, well, doing what we do, when someone approaches us and says, hey, I want to refresh this, I want to do a new thing, I want to go in this direction, that excites us. Like, even if it's the same company and the same people, we know that we're going to do something new, different. We're going to kind of blow them away again. And that's the thing, is it's when that passion and that excitement is there, even from way before the production process, that creative process, it reinvigorates the business once again, and it reinvigorates your customers. Customers now are crying out to see something new and exciting, and that really gets them going, yeah, wow, okay, this is amazing. And that doesn't happen when you're just recycling stuff over and over again.
So we've actually completely contradicted ourselves about 8 times during this podcast then.
Oh, no.
If
you counted every time, you win a prize.
So to summarise, I think what we're saying is, if you've got no alternative, and if the only thing you can do is to polish off, tidy up, and relaunch what you've already had done, and that's literally your only option, then great, why not?
Yeah.
But in reality, there are more options out there for you. There are more creative options out there for you, and you actually can get more bang for your buck, a greater return on investment by looking at doing something new and dynamic.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's the thing. If it's your only option, and if the video doesn't rely on lots of different factors that have all sort of stayed somewhat the same, or the video content itself was focused on something that doesn't necessarily need to change or need updating, that's fine. But generally, I think it's a creative opportunity, it's a business opportunity, it's something that, the same way that you'd invest in a new website or consultants and marketing and that sort of thing, it's essential. So yeah, I mean, I think dusting down for the new year, this year in particular, now that it seems like things relating to the P word are starting to transform and change, and we don't know day in, day out what's going to happen next, but it seems like there is a bit more optimism. It seems like things are going in an upbeat direction. Now I've said this recorded, it's all going to change, isn't it?
You've committed that.
Yeah, I've committed, touch wood. But yeah, and I think now's the time to really start refreshing and looking with new eyes on your own content. But yeah, so
and also finally, you should throw it out there to a number of people. Say, this is where we're at. This is what we're thinking of doing. What do you reckon?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we do, and we love doing that. And
shy Burns get nout.
Yes, that is the old adage. And I 100% agree. And so my last question: do you have another point?
No, I'm point free.
So you had your pen.
No, I'm waving my yes.
Okay. If you were gonna remake any TV show or film from the past, modern day, what would you do?
Well, I'm not a big fan of reboots anyway.
Yeah.
And I do think your eyes are at the front of your face for a reason, not at the back.
I like that.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's often the safest option. When they reboot a film or they go back to it, whatever. Maybe something that I think could have been better at the time, that if something's a brilliant story or a great screenplay, but it hasn't been delivered very well, or something was so seminal and so amazing and so incredible that it almost deserves to be recreated. So I'm going to say something amazing like I, Claudius.
Okay, yes, gives it another life, gives it another run through, because that's a really good show.
Because in a sense, when you look at it now, the acting's amazing, the storytelling's amazing, the story is amazing, but the sets all wobble, the actors are caked in makeup. If you put that level of integrity to a modern, high-order production value, you'd end up with something amazing. But as a rule, I like new, not old.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point. I mean, that's the thing. I sometimes find those nostalgia-based reboots are always a bit like they're just doing it and playing on the nostalgia factor. But I think if it was me, I'd go for a classic novel that's never been quite adapted to the way I'd like. Some kind of like Jane Austen or Dickens that you just think, oh, that's not how I interpreted the story. But no, it's a really interesting point, and remaking and redoing stuff from it's a really interesting discussion. But I hope it was for all of you listening. So that was it for today. So if you like what you hear and you are listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rate or review. If you do want to be on the show as well, or you have a question for us to answer, then drop us a message via our website, where you can also listen to the podcast on www.howellfilm.co.uk, or you can listen to this obviously wherever you get your podcasts as well. You can find Howell Film on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn, and we do release a new episode every Tuesday, so we'll see you next week. Have a great week.
Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye.